This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
I thought trading Luka Doncic away would be the most surprising thing of the week, but I think Serena Williams crip walking at the Super Bowl might have stolen the show. Just a bit. Wow, what a performance. I'm Jonah Javad. Welcome to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. He is Andrew Seeley, our producer extraordinaire. We got a lot to get to, so what's on the show, my guy?
Before we get a little bit too knee-deep in this, I just want to say I didn't feel like it was Super Bowl week until literally this morning because there's been so much to talk about, and we got to start with the Mavs. But let's get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
Mavs fans got their first introduction to Anthony Davis in every way imaginable. Incredible play on the court and injury. We'll discuss what Davis's presence does here for the team in the future. And the Eagles are Super Bowl champs again. The NFC East adds another title. And we ask which is more likely with a look at the new faces in charge of Dallas's major sports teams. That's what's on the show, Jonah. Now, who's on the show?
We've got two of our returning guests. Clarence Hill from our partners at All City DLLS covers the Cowboys for them, but he's a resident ball knower as well. And Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star Telegram. Mac, thanks for joining us as well, pal. Let's get right into it because a lot of stuff has happened. We saw Luka Doncic get introduced, Anthony Davis get introduced, AD's debut, and then exit with injury, and Luka's supposed to debut tomorrow. What was your biggest takeaway from this week? The thing that stood out most to you over the course of the last crazy 7 days?
For me personally, it was just the fact that the general manager had the full support of ownership to do what is a franchise-defining move. Typically in a move like this, ownership is going to intervene and say, hey, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know about this. But Patrick Dumont and the Adelson Group decided we're going to leave the basketball with the basketball people, and Nico Harrison decided this guy's not going to stay healthy. He's not going to listen to us. We've begged him, we've talked to him, we've bullied him to trying to get him to do what we want. You're gone. And that is something that we have not seen here since before Mark Cuban bought the team, and clearly he's no longer any part of this ownership group whatsoever.
Hey, Clarence, you got boxed out there. Go ahead.
That's okay. As I started saying, for me personally, it's been the way the Mavericks have kicked Luka out as he's gone out the door. The constant criticism of Luka. It's one thing to do the trade, and you have every right to the trade what's best for your franchise, but to continue to badmouth Luka on the way out the door, and you saw what their governor told the Dallas Morning News, I guess yesterday or today, and certainly we know what Nico has said. Luka's done so much for the franchise, and been in such a savior for a lot of Mavericks fans. You can point to the future if we were talking about the team and about the decisions, but to continue to talk about he was a bad culture fit and things like that, that does nobody any good.
The loyalty aspect of all of this has been brought up. Luka even mentioned loyalty in his press conference with the Lakers. Mavs have been spoiled silly with loyalty. I mean, very few teams in all of sports get an owner as dedicated. No one's really like Mark Cuban. Like to be what he was for the Mavericks, sitting courtside, joking around with players and joking around with the refs. He was like one of one in terms of sports owners in that regard. Then you get Dirk and Donnie Nelson in the front office. I mean, there was a whole regime for the Mavericks that basically stayed in place for almost 3 decades. And so there's a whole generation of Mavericks fans, millennials, who have only known that kind of loyalty. Hi, Andrew.
I'm one of them.
So that's all they've experienced. So this, what they're now facing now, is kind of the cold reality of sports that a lot of other fan bases kind of have experienced, but just the fact that it wasn't on Luka asking for a trade, which is normally how a lot of this stuff goes. But I want to pivot to Anthony Davis because that debut started off so great. But Mac, your kind of takeaway with how it ended, because it felt like this was probably Nico Harrison's greatest fear in terms of the injury.
Well, I think in one game we saw the why with Anthony Davis, and then we saw, that's why with Anthony Davis. No one can question his credentials. He's a phenomenal player. This is an all-NBA defensive player of the year, all-NBA, game changer, championship title contender type of player. He can't stay healthy. And we saw that in one game, his first game. And I know there in the press conference, Jonah, there on Friday afternoon, he was asked about his injuries, and he said, yeah, well, they're just kind of freak injuries. Well, maybe that's the case. But if it keeps happening, it's not a freak injury. It's a trend. It's a problem. And he's going to be out for several weeks. And I'm sorry, this team's window right now is with Kyrie at 32 and Anthony Davis at 32, and it's closed if he can't play. And right now, he's going to be on the bench again.
Clarence, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. It's about staying healthy. He has a nickname Street Clothes for a reason. So, all over social media, they're calling him Street Clothes. But remember this, Anthony Davis played more games than Luka did last year. He did play a lot of games last year. Certainly the injuries have popped up. It's been an issue. This trade, his time with the Mavs, you talk about Kyrie being older, Anthony being older, will be judged at the end of the season. Certainly the window is to win now. We'll see how they do in the playoffs. This is not a serious injury. But I think one reason this problem popped up is because he was rushing to play on Saturday as soon as they can because of all the negativism toward the trade, and he probably wasn't ready to play at that time. Get him healthy. Let's see how it goes. One thing I want to go back with the loyalty thing we talked about earlier. The Mavs are spoiled. Mav fans are spoiled. Dirk that's not normal. Okay,
right.
That's not normal in today's NBA to have the career that Dirk had. People forget they traded Steve Nash. Okay, they got rid of Steve Nash. I mean, he's a guy you could have been loyal to. He was close to Dirk, and we forget that they got rid of Steve Nash. This is the NBA of today. The idea that somebody's going to stay with your franchise for 20 years, that's not realistic.
But it does kind of buck the trend recently with Giannis and Jokic, who have kind of started reestablishing that part in the NBA. I think the thing, and you touched on it, Clarence, was I thought Anthony Davis was pressing a little bit in that first game, like just to kind of show I can do the 40-point games, I can play on both ends and be that guy. And it just kind of felt like this is a marathon, dude. We're about halfway through this thing. You don't need to come out and win the NBA title on the first game. And maybe it was overreacting a little bit, but it did definitely feel like he had something that maybe a little too much to prove right out the gate, Jonah.
Yeah, it just felt like Anthony Davis plays the hits all encompassed into one game. And Matt kind of touched on it. You kind of saw the brilliance, but also why every time since this trade we've said almost verbatim, Anthony Davis is a great player, and it's always followed by the injury history. And now it's happened, sure enough, after one game, and Mavs fans got to be like looking at Nico like this. We told you this was the fear. Anyway, we still got much to get to. Clarence, I heard you were in New Orleans. There was a big game in New Orleans tonight, so we're gonna chat about Super Bowl 59 after the break.
Did that happen?
I think so.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Eagles blow the doors off the Chiefs 40-22 in a Super Bowl 59 shocker, denying Kansas City their opportunity at an historic three-peat. And your Super Bowl MVP is Jalen Hurts, 17 of 22 on the night passing, 293 total yards of offense, and 3 total touchdowns. Eagles now have 2 Super Bowl titles, inching closer to the rest of the division. Washington with 3, Giants with 4, Cowboys still at the top with 5, but obviously a lot has changed over the last 30-something years, Jonah.
Yeah, and Eagles have now won 2 in the last 7 years, been to 3, and they've, I think, been to 4 in the last in this century. So a lot of work to do if you're the Cowboys, and I would think the Cowboys just got a blueprint from the Eagles on how to conduct business in the offseason. Clarence, I want to start with you as we begin this second segment. The Cowboys in particular made it pretty clear in the last offseason that they're just going to stand pat and hope things work out. Eagles did the opposite. You know, they did extensions right from the jump. They brought in Saquon Barkley. Then they drafted extremely well, which is what they've done for the last few years. But what do you think this Eagles Super Bowl victory signals to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office in terms of how to move forward?
Yeah, to me, it's a referendum on how the Cowboys do business. You know, and the Cowboys were not all in. The Eagles have been all in. The Cowboys have talked about, doomsday is coming for the Eagles. And I talked to the Eagles owner, talked to the Eagles GM about that at the Super Bowl. Harry Roseman, he said, I don't sit up here and worry about doomsday. We take care of our guys. Certainly their foundation is the draft. They've drafted a lot of the stars on the team, but they've been able to supplement what they've done in the draft by adding guys on free agency. Certainly the big one was Saquon Barkley this year, the type of season he had. To me, everything the Cowboys didn't do and what the Eagles did this season, and for the Cowboys to go 7-10, for Eagles owner and GM to be in their 3rd or 4th Super Bowl since, in the last 7 years and finally win it. They are the standard in which the Cowboys are chasing.
Mac, what do you think about the Super Bowl? What stood out to you?
Bored the hell out of me. The thing that stood out to me, honestly, is that Jalen Hurts should not have won the MVP award. And he had a great game, but the defensive front four of the Philadelphia Eagles should have been the MVP. Josh Sweat, name them. They're the reason they won. And I know the offense, Saquon Barkley didn't do anything in that game. Jalen Hurts had a really nice game. But that team and that Super Bowl champion was on the back of that front four that harassed Patrick Mahomes all day. And if you want to know the quickest way to make a difference in this current NFL, if you don't have that quarterback, get a couple guys who can get after that guy. Because what that defensive front four did in that Super Bowl was the reason why they are Super Bowl champions. And the Cowboys have one of those guys right now, one of those guys in Micah Parsons. They clearly need one or two other horses to make that kind of impact in that kind of game, and they don't have them.
It always comes down to the battle in the trenches, right? You win both the lines of scrimmage, and the Eagles clearly did that, but the offensive line definitely held up there into the bargain, too. I mean, Chris Jones on the other side of the Chiefs has been a dominant force in the playoffs for like the last, it feels like a decade practically at this point, but to stone him and give Jalen Hurts the time to find guys downfield, that's the primary concern I have with the Cowboys moving forward, is the line going to develop in the way with some of these young guys to fill in the spots? Jonah, what do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, all I do when I see the Eagles play football is see how far away the Cowboys are from reaching that measuring stick. I mean, it just feels like totally worlds apart, not just in terms of like how they conduct business. I mean, Eagles are doing extensions like the moment, they get to the offseason, trying to avoid, the market price from going higher. But it's also the drafting. The Cowboys used to be really good at drafting, I mean, really like 3, 4, 5 years ago, but the last couple of years, they have really struggled to draft well. Whereas the Eagles have drafted impact starters. I mean, this last draft alone, they got 2 starters in their secondary. One of them had a pick six. The other's a shutdown corner. I mean, it's that type of immediate impact the Cowboys need from draft picks. Really the type of impact that any team needs from rookies when you have a quarterback that is receiving so much money. When you have so much money allocated to your quarterback, you need rookies and first contract guys to show up. And that's really been the case for the Eagles. We've got a fun segment up next, but really quick. Clarence, what was your favorite part about New Orleans?
So many different things. Bourbon Street was wild, certainly, but Jerry Jones at the NFL honors thing, it's a shocker that we're not in the Super Bowl. What? What? How is this a shocker? That the Cowboys not in the Super Bowl. It wasn't a shocker. You did nothing to improve that team. Jerry Jones will still say things that just boggle your mind. Of course, he and Deion Sanders had a little joke at the NFL honors, making fun of everybody who made a big deal about that conversation, because that never was going to happen. Deion Sanders was never a serious candidate.
Speaking of NFL honors, though, I'm thinking back to the joke that Snoop Dogg threw out. Remember when the Cowboys were good? I mean, Mac, we joke about them being a punchline now, but they're not really hiding it anymore. I mean, come on.
They're kind of in on the joke. And Jonah, I've been dying to say this. You were sitting there celebrating Mark Cuban's unique loyalty and love of the Dallas Mavericks and that we were spoiled by it. Brother, we've been spoiled and somehow cursed with that way before Mark Cuban, because no one has been more loyal to his team than Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
He was the original Cuban, and the only difference is his results have been a little bit different the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And the best part about that joke was not about the Cowboys, really about Bill Belichick's girlfriend. But hey,
I ain't touching that one with a 10-foot pole, man.
Back to school night.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We've got the gaming segment on deck.
That's right.
Lots of fun.
Which is more likely? Stay with us in the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
And now it's time for Which is More Likely, sponsored by the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for Which is More Likely. I've got a series of scenarios for our esteemed panel. It's up to them to decide which of the statements is more likely to happen. Sound simple? That's because it is. Don't complicate it, Jonah. All right. Statement number 1 here. Let's pick on the new guys in charge around these parts. Which is more likely? Anthony Davis leads the Mavs to an NBA title, or Brian Schottenheimer gets the Cowboys back to the NFC title game? Clarence, kick us off here. What do you think?
Anthony Davis. The Mavericks are closer to winning now. I don't think either are likely, but if one is more likely, it's Anthony Davis.
All right, Mac, what do you think?
Eventually, we're going to be right. Give me Brian Schottenheimer and the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship game, only because eventually, it's going to happen. And I'm going to be on the front end of this thing. And that's why when it happens, I'm going to be like, I knew it. That's why I'm going with my guy, Shotty.
Fair enough. Jonah, which side of the fence you on here?
Mac, you're just being so contrarian, really just playing devil's advocate for the sake of television. The answer is Anthony Davis by a mile, just because the Mavs went to the NBA Finals last year. I mean, he's still a great player when healthy. So if he can get back and they get to the playoffs, sure, they got a shot.
There was a certain caveat there that I want to kind of linger on a little bit.
I don't know what
more.
to do with my hands.
And at least if we're talking about windows, Shotty's got 4 years, and we're talking about the Mavs window being 2 to 3, so he's got a little bit longer runway to get into that raffle to try and get to the NFC title game. All right, statement number 2 here. Let's move on. Which is more likely, Dak wins the Super Bowl or Mahomes catches Brady? Dak's runway a little bit different, and Mahomes' runway a little bit different, but and this question loses a little steam since Mahomes lost today, but Mac, jump in here. What do you think?
Give me Dak winning a Super Bowl only because what Patrick Mahomes has to do to catch Tom Brady. I mean, he's not even at the halfway point.
Right.
That's how tall that mountain is. So I'm going to take Dak's chances. He's just got to get one, whereas Patrick's got to get like 4 more. So give me those odds, even though I don't like either one of them.
Clarence, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm piggybacking on Mac. I don't like either one of them. Certainly losing tonight really took a shot at Mahomes getting to Brady. I mean, they needed to get this one tonight to really continue that thing. I think the Chiefs are going to have a lot of guys retire. It's going to be a different team going forward. Certainly, it's a long shot for Dak, but Dak has a better chance than Mahomes at this point.
I hear you. Jonah?
I'll take Mahomes. For the sole reason of this Chiefs team didn't really seem fully that good this year. They had to win a lot of games by 1 possession, and they still made it all the way to the Super Bowl, running into a juggernaut Eagles team. If you get some fresh legs and get some new talent in there, and maybe some of their rookies and second-year guys grow up, the Chiefs are still going to be around, and I still think Mahomes is as good as anybody on the planet when he's got the supporting cast and Andy Reid calling plays. So give me that.
Speaking of the Chiefs being a little bit probably not as good as their record would indicate on some level. All of the penalties seem to go the opposite way. The penalties were such a huge thing going into this game. They get one tic-tac call right out the gates, and everyone thinks, oh, no, here we go. And then everything else for the rest of the game is against the Chiefs, which I thought was pretty funny. I personally, I'm leaning toward Mahomes a little bit just because Dak's got the Jerry Mountain to climb. Like, there's a part of this where it's butting up against him at that point. And I feel like Mahomes has got a little bit better leadership long term.
Did you say Dak wins a Super Bowl period or wins one with the Cowboys?
Period. And that's a good caveat. I agree.
What if he goes to a contender?
To the Raiders or whichever team needs a quarterback
2-3 years from now?
35 years. All right. Moving on here. Statement number 3. Which is more likely to get their number retired by their current team? Anthony Davis or Luka Doncic? And this is a caveat because, again, if Davis wins the title here, I feel like that guarantees his number goes in the rafters at one level. And I feel like we all anticipate Luka playing at that certain level to have his number retired. So, Jonah, which do you think is more likely to happen?
Luka's jersey getting retired by the Lakers is absolutely more likely. He's 25 years old, AD's 32. It's just math.
Mac, what do you think?
Well, if you listen to the Mavericks, it's not going to be Luka because he's more likely to be on my 600-pound life than he is to be playing good enough basketball to have his number retired by the Lakers. But given his age, it is going to, and when he did that press conference the other day, this is what pained me as someone who follows and wants to see the Mavericks win. Luka Doncic's number 77 is going to be retired by the LA Lakers next to Worthy and Kobe and Magic and Kareem. And I'm just going to you got to be kidding me. The Mavericks gave them this guy. And Clarence, so I'm going to go with Luka.
Clarence, real quick, jump in here.
I don't think either will get retired, but I'm going to go with Luka.
All right, fair enough. Appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for taking the time on Super Bowl Sunday. As always, we will see you guys next week. Jonah's final take coming up next. Mavs saying that Luka deserves to be on The Biggest Loser, but The Biggest Loser today wasn't the Chiefs, it was Drake. I don't think there's any way about that, man.
Absolutely diabolical performance by Kendrick.
All right, let's get into it. Jonah's final take.
All right, Mavericks fans, I don't know where all of you are on the stages of grief. I know last week it was a lot different than where you are tonight. Do not let me tell you how to fan. All of you can fan individually how you please. But I do want to say that I hope tomorrow some of you can start to turn the page or at least find acceptance into your heart. Luka Doncic will suit up for the first time as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. It is going to be so weird. It already is weird watching him wear a Lakers jersey in practice and for photo shoots. It's going to be really weird to see it in a game. But I hope then finally some of this acceptance of this insane trade starts to kind of lead to that next chapter and the new era of Mavericks basketball, and we can all, I don't want to say move on, but take the next step forward.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Don't want to tell them how to fan, but it's impossible not to feel like the flames are getting fanned a little bit here. Just with every single day, there's something new about this entire situation.
Thank you. We had to have the Andrew Seeley pun to cap off the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Without fail. He's Andrew Seeley. I'm Jonah Javad. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.